For the panel discussion, I would like to bring in all our invited speakers and members from IIT Jodhpur. Also joining the panel, obviously, Professor Chaudhary, our director. And on behalf of Dr. Anand Plapalli, Head of Center for Emerging Technology and Sustainable Development, will be joining Dr. Vivek Vijay. He is an active social outreach volunteer. He is associated with Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. For each of the question, we will go around the panel and I would request you to share your thought within a couple of minutes. So I'll request with our first question, because as we all know that our new education policy came in 2020, which suggests specific recommendations about rural school education. Many of our speakers have spoken about it. So I would like to possibly start with Ms. Kripa Subramani. And if she can share that from her personal experience, what are the grassroots challenges which are faced by next generation ideas in the rural landscape? So Ms. Kripa and then Dr. Vivek Vijay, if you could give your comments.
Thank you. So before coming to the challenges as such, the truth here is the mindset that you see within the people here in the rural communities. They still are focused on roti, kapda and makan. They still have to think about, do I get my 2 meals for myself, for my family? And if not, what next? They still do have mobile phones, the technology penetration, everything is done. But education is not something which is on top of their minds. For them, they feel more the number of children, that many hands are there to work, and that many mouths can be then fed later on. So I think bringing that behavior change, the mindset change on how education can exponentially change the future. It's not something that you can see today. You would feel that it's a very slow progress, that children are going to school, they're learning something, पर इसका क्या फायदा? But only after they may have studied for say over 10 years, they will be able to see that, okay, now with the skill development or the other learnings that they have had, they would know how to build a better future for themselves. They'll be able to know what does it mean to take care of one's health, take care of the women in the family. All of these things, they're all tied together. So I think that's the core thing, and I do not know if it should be called a challenge. It's the reality of what we are seeing today. But if that is something that's cracked, I think people will be opening up and considering education is the crux of any problem that they are seeing today, and will be able to take that forward.
Okay, Dr. Vivek Vijay, your thoughts? You are on mute. We can't hear you.
Maybe you need to join by audio, Dr. Vijay. We can see that you are not on mute, but I think the audio is not connected. In case there is a headphone or an earphone, you could disconnect it.
Am I audible now, Ankita?
Yes, you are now.
Okay, thank you very much. So the question is really very important. I mean, and I'll give a specific answer probably from one of our case studies. It is from one of the villages named Dingana, about 28 kilometers far from Jodhpur. And when we started working over there with the school, teachers were motivated, students were motivated. But unfortunately, the situation was no girl was more than 8 standard pass in the village. So we did not know the region. We tried to motivate them that educate these girls. But as she said, Kripaji has already mentioned that for them the main concern is roti, kapda, and makan, and that's what the whole thing about. We tried hard from our best, and next year we did not see results. Again, there were girls in 8th standard, and again they dropped out. Then we saw the challenge. Challenge was something else we could not actually predict. It was like the school of 9th and 10th standard was 4 kilometers far from the village, and nobody wanted to send the girl alone to that school. So that was a fear factor among them. So and then we convinced them that if we hire a vehicle for all the girls and send them together, then they agreed to it. Even they paid the money for the vehicle. I mean, we did not pay the money. So and now I'm happy to share with you that some of these girls are going to college. So it was in the year 2012 and 13. So I mean, sometimes what we see from outside, that is completely different than when we work with these people. And another challenge in this pandemic time we faced was we tried to give them devices, but they did not use for positive purpose. It was only used for negative purposes due to the unsupervised learning we have in those villages. So these are a few challenges, or I would say these are a few areas of work we need to push.
Yeah, so we understand that there are mindset and societal challenges when we talk about education in rural areas. Maybe connected to that is, can there also be certain technological solutions? And maybe I can request Dr. Yadav also to comment on it, that can there be certain technological solution, or what are the specific technical challenges there? Like, let's say if we talk about envisioning AI to reach to, rural masses and school, what could be there?
Yeah. Thanks, Ankita. So I think from a rural perspective, so I will probably touch into from a commercial perspective, right? Like what's being done, right? So for example, a bunch of education technology companies from a commercial perspective are using preloaded materials on a tablet, right? Like for example, most of these, a lot of these places have network connectivity issue, right? And to make sure that you don't depend on the network connectivity, you preload the material on a tablet, or in some cases even a SD card, right? So that is something that the startups of today or the companies of today are already using. From where the AI come into picture, I think probably AI comes into picture on more on the engagement side, that when somebody watches that material or goes to that material, how can we keep the engagement high? Because it's easy to intervene on an internet-based material because you can change it anytime, right? But something which is preloaded and given to the students, you can't change that easily. It has to sync up and all those things. So I think the engagement side, there is still a lot of opportunity to be done. That is not very much taken care of with today's solutions.
Right, thank you. And I think somewhat on a similar note, Pratiti was also talking about that she has done some work. So Pratiti, from your experience, is there something with what you can add to Dr. Yadav's comment? Pratiti, can you hear me?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I do agree to Dr. Kuldeep to quite some extent. And yes, pre-downloaded modules and using those as the mediums in the tablets is something which is actually being taken up in a very positive manner in the schools, and we have actually witnessed that when we were conducting the studies in the schools. So that the students also look forward to, because that is something very new for them to explore, and a very interesting and engaging way to interact to. So it's not that it's only the tablet that they are restricting themselves to, but they are also using the projector screens to connect the tablets to, so that the entire class as a whole can see what is going on, and they can have those collaborative activities. And we had also seen these demos where students were taught about very basic say English in English when the prepositions are being taught. So they were actually made to follow the video of how to, what is on, what is in, what is under. So they were also physically doing that while watching it on the screens. So yes, actually technology is actually helping these students to witness how the practice of learning can be brought forth with an engagement attached to it.
Okay, thank you. And as Dr. Yadav was saying that there isn't much done in this area yet. So let's say if I connect from that same point, that if there are some people thinking of startups or entrepreneurial venture, let's say something on this area or anything in edtech, what are the things that people need to be watchful if they want to start such ventures and make it successful? Dr. Yadav, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge opportunity, first of all. I think some of the things which I think would be quite interesting to watch in next few years is going to be satellite-based internet. So I think Starlink is coming in a few months now. Started doing it. So that having a satellite-based internet connectivity does not limit on any network infrastructure. Like Airtel and Vodafone doesn't have to put their cell towers, right? So you can directly connect. So let's say when any foundation or anybody else put money on the ground, the students can subscribe to whatever the device can talk to that directly in some way, right? So that is an interesting opportunity to me. I think, to be very, very frank, I don't offloading of this content on tablet and giving it to students is not a very, very scalable way. As I told you, right? The intervention becomes very challenging because if you don't go and sync them back, they become obsolete and you don't even know, because in a lot of these remote learning areas, like even when you are teaching, let's say IIT Jodhpur students, tracking becomes a very, very key phenomenon. If you can't track, if you can't measure, you can't intervene, right? So we really need to figure out if there is some technology which can figure out the network part really well. I think my ideas will be totally on that.
Okay. So maybe I would like to, sort of ask a very broader question, because I understand that there are a lot of technological opportunities, hurdles, as well as societal conditions. So what we really need to do a lot. So if I just, make it a simple statement that how each one of you, all of our panelists, how do you really envision Education 4.0, which is suggested, for future education in India? And also Professor Chaudhary was mentioning about Society 5.0, the whole concept where the way society should function, keeping human in center of interest. How do you really see and envision that happening in India for future of education? So maybe I start with Preeti, and then I'll go to Kripa, and then anybody who would like to, one by one, if you can give me your thoughts. So can we start with you, Pratiti?
Sure. Okay. So to envision, I would say technology should and must be, developed in a way that it is engaging enough for the students. So engagement is comes out to be a biggest factor. So even if students are being shown videos in the classrooms using those smart classroom smart boards, which are like currently being used in the classrooms, even if they are being shown, you do not know whether the students are actually attentively watching those videos or not. So engaging factor becomes a key like a key thing to watch to and look forward to while you are coming up with the technology in use. So and another part is definitely the fatigue that is along with that when you are using the technology. Because certain things are, if they're handheld, then again you have the fatigue in sense of physically being involved with it, and otherwise also the cognitive load of taking the things while they are in display. So all those things are there to look into while bringing up technology.
So engagement and cognitive load of such environment. Okay, Ms. Kripa, do you have any further, additional point to envisioning education 4.0?
I concur with what Pratiti just shared. This is an ICT solution, right? And it has to happen in a human-centered approach with all that is happening around with this design thinking, having everybody collaborating to make a solution. I think it can only work best if it's in a participatory mode. You include the parents, because if the education is for a child, you would have the parents around, the community around. The way they say it takes a village to raise a child, we must have a village to teach a child. And the technology can be an enabler in doing these things. So you can have tracking mechanisms for the parents or somebody else who is taking ownership of education for a child to see how far has he gone, what has he learned, not learned, etc. And not necessarily have the learning in a technological way. The learning could be in any way. It could be activity based, it could be story based, song based. I mean, there are so many different ways of pedagogies that are coming in now. But ICT interventions can be in tracking it, in assessing in each and every step what kind of inputs are going into the solution that you're designing. Evaluate, is it working, not working? If not, on the spot, change it. Evaluate the outputs, the kind of things that you had thought of, that this is how the learning will happen and the education is going to be supported along with the society itself. Is it happening? If not, what can be done differently? The impact, is it meeting the long-term development impact goals, the short-term goals that we have set for the community itself or for a larger population? All of that could be checked with the ICT interventions that we have in place. And I feel that with each one of us actually thinking through in each of these steps, what should be the input, what are the kind of processes that would happen, what is the kind of output you see out of it, and then merge them all together. I am very sure that this is not something that cannot be cracked. It's just putting all of our heads together and working this out.
I totally love, first of all, your emphasis on that there are multiple stakeholders here. Most of the time, we just talk about this, learner. What about other people who are part of this whole system? Other stakeholders. So I really love that part, and thank you so much, Dr. Yadav. Your comments on this.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I concur with what Pratiti and the speaker before me have said, right? But I remember one statement that somebody said to me, that every time a new technology came in last 100 years, everybody said that it will disrupt the education, right? So when radio came, the same thing happened. When TV came, same thing happened. When even printing came, same thing happened. And when internet came, of course, we are in internet era, right? And when mobile phone came, similarly, right? So I think the technology is just one part of the puzzle. And I think we often are good at building the technology part of it, but we are not really good at building the solution part, right? And that's where you see so much of a demographic gap, right? There are people who are able to study this COVID pandemic without even realizing that, okay, but there are like lakhs of students who can't study because they don't have a network access, right? So yeah, definitely. I mean, technology is just one part, but it is a very, very important place, specifically with internet, because all the previous technologies were broadcast technologies, right? One way. Internet enables us to play both ways. You can collect feedback also, which were not there, right? So it's an interesting paradigm, but I think a solutions approach would be way better, right? And solution localized, because something which works in US or something which works in South Africa does not work here, does not work in Rajasthan's village that Professor Vivek was talking about, right? So I think there are a lot of other variables that we need to take into account.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think there's a statement, something goes like, the society takes a lot more time to catch up with the speed of technological changes. So if our intention and approach is more solution focused, probably we will catch up soon. Dr. Vivek Vijay, your comments.
Yeah, a quick thought on this, that I feel there should be two different thought processes. you have, as Kripaji has already mentioned, you have India and Bharat. So these two thought processes should work in parallel to see the holistic picture. So on one side, you have still teacher-centric education. On the other side, you have learner-centric education. So in the urban area, if you give a device, the child will learn on his own, even if you have unsupervised learning. But in those areas where you do not have the supervisor ready over there, then it is still teacher-centric, and therefore the thought process should be slightly different. So when we're talking about technology, I feel that first we have to upgrade them to the level of urban area people, where they can use the advancement of technology, what we are talking about. So probably for some time, I feel that there should be two thought processes run in parallel, and then a slightly faster mode in the Bharat to bring it to the level of India.
Wonderful. I totally agree. And that's such an amazing thought. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. It was such a lively discussion. I wish we had more time, but we are running short of time. So maybe now I'll try to summarize today's event. And we had an amazing day today. I hope each one of us, everybody who's here, who was here, each one of us got some food for thought, even listening to each other. And we had tried to provide a glimpse of plans and activities what we are planning, and we also heard so many amazing diverse topics from Pratiti to Kripa to Kuldeep to Dr. Holland, Professor Chaudhary, everybody. It was such an Professor Murthy. It was such an amazing learning experience, and each one of these talks gave us insight to some of the frontier areas, frontier changes happening in this area of education today. So I'm really grateful for all of that. I guess the whole encapsulation of all of those ideas in those talks we had in some way, even in the short panel discussion we had. We are really humbled, and we are energetic for the energetic participation from each one of you. And we really feel motivated today to contribute to the goals we have designed for ourselves. So thank you so much. We are hopeful that we continue, your support, our efforts, and we are able to contribute to the changing world of education. But we would also like to keep our footing in the core philosophy of education, because we believe that our philosophy, Indian philosophy, or any educational philosophy, all of the newer ideas what we think of, they have their rooting, their roots today. And I think those visions, if we follow them with these new frontier changes, we are preparing citizens, or maybe netizens, for the world which is good for all. And I guess I like to look at shlokas, because they provide you a very different kind of a meaning. There is one which portrays the essence of education in a very nice way. Pardon me if I pronounce it not in a very good manner. I am not a Sanskrit scholar, my father was, but I'll try. And the shlok goes like, Tat karma yanna bandhyaya sa vidyaya vimuktaye aya saya param karma vidyanya shilpunya puram. This is from Vishnu Puran, and it essentially means it sort of translates to that education leads to acquirement of wisdom. And wisdom is the one which teaches you actions without any attachment. It liberates people from bondage, from their prejudices, from their ignorance and greed and so on. And the knowledge which is acquired through this process, it's not just information. It's a knowledge, it's a wisdom which tells you what needs to be done for the welfare of all. And I think that's the core philosophy we are looking at, that it is education for everyone, for liberating each one of us and doing good, which is for all of us.